women, her mother said. Charlie Nesbitt and his wife had another fight last night. Well, they're fighting all the time. Boy, he's just such a, get a bad feeling from him, and her too, really. Well, actually, she's not all that bad. I mean, I don't know if you remember in high school, I mean, she was very creative. Well, sure, you would think that because you were engaged to her. Well, it was only 6 weeks of an engagement. I mean, she was a sweet kid, I mean, but she just wanted to be a theater person, kind of live in a trunk. I mean, I just couldn't do that. I mean, you remember when we were in high school, Dad, you remember when we had the musical in high school, and she wrote a few of those songs. In fact, you know, she wrote a little song for me back then. Oh, yeah, you laugh, but she wrote a special song for me. You're just a little bit jealous. Dad, come on, you keep talking, we have to go. I think you better take her outside before she has a heart attack. So Margaret and her father went out the back door and walked across the lot. And she went to the spot where she'd heard it. There was nothing. I don't hear anything, honey. No, but Dad, wait a minute, it was right here. I mean, she was screaming just a while. I mean, can't you see right here, like, screaming woman. Nothing. I'm gonna go back in the house. No, Dad, can't you see all this like dirt that was disturbed? It was somebody dug up something here. It's Mr. Kelly, it's his lot. He dug a hole so he could bury his garbage and his trash here. Well, somebody else then came along and must have dug up after he had dug, and they put somebody down here. Dad, you gotta believe me, listen. Honey, it's hot out here. I'm gonna go back in the house, take myself a shower. Don't stay out here too long. And her father went back in the house. Screaming woman. Screaming woman. She ran back into the house. Dad, she's screaming again. She's screaming at me. Listen, I've had just about enough of this. You're gonna go upstairs to your room, put a wet cloth on your head, go into your room, lie down in your bed. In fact, I don't want you to leave this house for the rest of the day. And he closed the door. Margaret just started to weep and weep and weep. She could hear her parents talking outside the door. And then they walked back downstairs. And after a while, she stopped crying, started thinking. She got up off her bed, looked out the window. It was a bit of a distance from her window to the ground, but she knew she had to do it. She took the sheets off of her bed and tied them together tightly, wound one end around the bedpost, pulled it tightly, put the rest of it out the window, and quietly, she looked out, climbed out the window, and shimmied all the way down to the ground. She ran to the garage and got a shovel. Stuck that shovel into the ground and started to dig and dig and dig. The sweat was pouring down her face. Even after just 5 minutes of digging on that hot day, she dug and she dug for about 10 minutes when all of a sudden a little boy came running across the lot. It was Dippy Smith. He was the same age as Sea-Watch, went to her school. Hey, Margaret, what are you doing? I'm digging. Why are you digging? There's a screaming woman down here, and I'm trying to dig her up and save her. I don't hear no screaming woman. Just listen to the ground, listen. And the woman screamed again. Hey! How'd you do that? How did I do what? What do you mean? How'd you throw your voice like that? That was awesome. I'm not throwing my voice, it's a real, no, did you get that Throw Your Voice book that you saw on TV? No, they're really, I'm gonna go to the other side of the lot. I'm gonna go all the way to the other side and you stand right here and you'll hear it. And she did, and he did. And the two of them began to dig and dig and dig and dig together. 10 more minutes went by, 15 more minutes, 20 minutes, when a shadow passed across them. Hey! What are you doing down here, the two of you? Put that dirt right back where you got it. But there's a screaming woman down here. Can't you hear her? Can't you hear her, Mr. Kelly? And the woman screamed again. I don't hear anything. Put that dirt back in there. You have no business digging on my property. And they had no choice but to take the mound of dirt they had shoveled out of the hole and put it back in. All while Mr. Kelly stood there with his arms folded, pretending he didn't hear the woman screaming. I catch you here again, I'm gonna give you my foot. And he turned and went back in his house. He's the one, Margaret whispered to Dippy. He's the one what? He's the one that buried the woman underground. I bet that's his wife under there. We need to call the police or something. They ran down the street to the phone booth, called the police. They ran back to some bushes across from Mr. Kelly's house to watch. And sure enough, the police came, knocked on his door. Mr. Kelly? Mr. Kelly? Yeah, what is it? Yes, sir, officers. What do you... Just want to know, is your wife home? Yeah, Hannah, come here. How are you, Mrs. Kelly? I'm so sorry. We got a call that you were buried under some dirt in a lot. It was some kids who called, but we had to check it out. So sorry to take your time. Darn kids. You wait until the next time I see them. Timmy said, man, we're going to get into trouble. I can't stay out here with you anymore. I've got to go home. And I just remembered, isn't old man Kelly really hard of hearing? Yeah, Margaret said. That's why he couldn't hear the screaming woman. And Dippy ran home. Margaret went back to the lot, and she could barely hear the woman. She had to do something, and she knew what it was. She decided that she would knock on every single door to make sure that the woman in the house was home. So she went to the first house on her block, and she knocked. Oh, hi, Miss McNeil. I was knocking to just say hello. It's a really hot day. How are you today? And she went from house to house. Oh, yeah, I was so glad to see you, Miss Smith, I'm glad to see you at home. She went from house to house to house, and the day was getting longer, and the sun was moving lower in the sky, and she got to the last house, and that was the house of the Nesbits, Charlie and Helen, the next-door neighbors. She knocked on the door, and sure enough, Charlie Nesbit came to the door. Hi, Miss Nesbit, is Miss Nesbit home? No, she's not here right now, kid. She went to the store. Okay, I'll go and wait for her. She went right inside, right past him. I don't think she might not be coming back for a while. I don't know if you should wait for her. I'll just sit right here and wait. I'll just wait for her. Well, I think she's gonna, she was talking about going to see her mother. Her mother's kind of sick after she goes to the store, shopping. She's gonna go. Mother's in Schenectady, so I mean, is there something you needed from her? Well, I just wanted to tell her something. Well, what was it you wanted to tell her, kid? I just wanted to tell her there was a screaming woman buried under the dirt in the lot. You dropped your cigarette, Mr. Nesbit. Oh, I didn't I? And he picked it up. So, how do you know that? I heard her screaming. She's real. Well, have you told anybody else about this kid? Everybody. The match that he had struck burned his finger. Anybody do anything about it? No, nobody believes me. A smile came over his face. Well, of course, you're just a kid. Listen, she might actually come back. She was doing some grocery shopping, and some of it was probably for stuff she needs for the house, so why don't you just come on in and sit down? You play blackjack, kid? Yeah, my dad actually taught me how to play blackjack. Well, let's sit down and have a game of blackjack. Well, I think I need to go get a spade and go dig the woman up. Just wait for my wife. She might be here in a while. Let's play a game. And he took her arm and led her into the living room and sat her down in a chair. Brought out a deck of cards. An hour passed by. And she started to think. I know what he's doing. He's trying to stall until she runs out of air and she can't scream anymore. I have to go now. I have to go back out in the lot. Let's one more game, kid. You're pretty good at this. Let's do one more game. And another hour went by. And he looked at his watch and he said, listen, how did the screams sound? Were they kind of strong? She said, they're getting weaker and weaker. Well, I guess you've waited long enough, kid. Why don't you go on now? By that time, it was dark. Margaret left his house, went around the back of it, back to the lot. She couldn't hear anything anymore. She got down on her hands and her knees and put her face to the ground, her ear to the ground. No more screams. But she did hear something. She was singing now. A sad song. She was still alive. But what could Margaret do? Her parents didn't believe her. She couldn't go to the police. She listened and listened. And then she stood up. She turned around and she marched right back to the back door of her house, walked up the steps, opened the door and said, "Father, there you are. You are really gonna get it this time. Father, you've got to come out and dig up this woman. She's still there. Don't say one more thing about her. I heard her. She's still alive, and now she's not screaming anymore. She's singing a song. It sounds like this. I love you, Lord. I loved you. Well, what did you say? Do that again. I loved you, Lord. I loved you. Where did you hear that song? Where did you hear that song? That song was written by Helen. It was written for me. We were in high school. You weren't even born then. How would you know that song? It was the lady in the lot. She sang it. What do you mean the... Oh, my God. Oh, my God. And her father ran out the back, grabbed the shovel, and ran towards the lot, screaming and yelling for the neighbors to come. Margaret got on the phone. She called her friend. "Hi, Dippy. Everything's okay. The screaming woman's not screaming anymore. I'll meet you in the lot in about a minute and a half. Okay, that's when there's a monkey." And out the back door, she ran.
Well, I wanted to save the best for last. I wanted to thank the Waukegan Public Library for stealing Raina Morrow away from Genesee Theatre. And she now works for the library and is our go-to person for the storytellers and the schools as well. And she tells the storytellers where we get to sleep and where we have food and all those important things. So thank you, Raina. We started the program with Dandelion Wine, Ray Bradbury's seminal book about growing up in Waukegan, the place he called Greentown in that book. It was Studs Terkel's favorite work of Ray Bradbury's, Dandelion Wine. And it's about Waukegan, and he talks about coming back to it, coming back to his youth, and coming back to those early memories of October country. And other memories and images of Waukegan and Greentown. So we are going to finish with a story from Greentown where Ray, like the story we began with, once again wrestles with this paradox of life and death and the passage of time. So please welcome back Megan Wells. It begins in the middle of the afternoon, the first day of August. Bill Forrester steps off the fiery pavement into the soda-scented air and vanilla freshness of Henry's drugstore. He sits at the snow marble counter and asks Henry to list his favorite ices, and the most exotic at that. And when Henry says, "old-fashioned lime vanilla," "That's it," says William Forrester. While he's waiting, he turns on his rotating stool, the gleaming mirrors, the silver spigots, the hush of the whirl-around ceiling fans, the green awnings over the window all pass under his gaze. He looks up at the calendar on the wall. August 1st, 1928. He stops. His eyes fall upon the face and form of Miss Helen Loomis, sitting at a table, 95 years old, ice cream spoon in hand, lime vanilla ice cream in mouth.
Young man, you are a person of taste and imagination, with the courage of 10 men. Else you would not have ordered straight out, without quibble or reservation, such an unusual flavor as lime vanilla ice.
He nods solemnly toward her.
Come sit with me. We'll talk about unusual ice creams and such things as we may have a bent for.
He picks up his dish of ice cream, walks to the table, and sits.
You're William Forrester. You write a column for the Chronicle, a good enough column. I know more about you than I'd care to tell.
I know you as well. You're Helen Loomis. I was in love with you once.
Well, that's the way I like a conversation to open. Oh, you've completely taken away my appetite with your talk. Don't tell me how or when or why you were in love with me. That's grounds for another meeting. Since you're a reporter, why don't you come to my house tomorrow for tea between 3 or 4 in the afternoon? It may just be that I can tell you the history of this town since it was a trading post.
Helen rises to leave, stops and turns.
You will come, won't you, Mr. Forrester?
Well, yes, I'll come.
You remind me of a gentleman I went with 70 years ago.
Helen heads into town on business, leaving him there sitting at the table, watching over her, finishing his dish of old-fashioned lime vanilla ice. The next morning, Bill Forrester takes care of some news items for the paper. After lunch, he has time to go fishing in the river outside of town. At 3 o'clock, he finds his car taking him down a certain street. He notices with interest as his hands turn the steering wheel of his car, motoring him up a vast circular drive where he comes to stop under a vine-covered entry. Getting out of his car, he can't help but notice that his car looks a lot like his pipe. Old, chewed upon, and decrepit, next to this freshly painted 3-story Victorian house. He sees a ghost-like movement at the end of the long green garden and hears a whispering cry. Miss Loomis is sitting at the table waiting for him, the silver teapot glittering its soft silver surfaces. This is the first time that a woman has been ready and waiting, and I think it's the first time I've been on time for an appointment.
Why is that, William Forrester?
Well, I don't know, Miss Loomis.
Well,
She pours the tea.
to begin with, why don't you tell me everything you know about the world?
I don't know anything about the world.
Oh, that's the beginning of wisdom. When you're 17, you know everything about the world. But then when you're 27, if you still know everything about the world, then you're really only 17.
You must know a lot about the world.
Oh no, that's just a privilege of us old people to seem to know everything about the world. It's just an act. And between ourselves, we old ones, we smile and we wink at each other. We say, "How do you like my mask of wisdom?"
He laughs, and the laughter comes more easily than it has for months. They grow quiet. She looks into her teacup.
I'm glad we met so late. I wouldn't have wanted you to meet me when I was a foolish girl of 21.
They have special laws for pretty girls of 21.
Well, how do you know that? When the dragon eats the swan, what, is there a few feathers sticking out of my mouth? That's what it is, you know, this body. It's just a dragon, all scales and folds. Dragon ate the swan so long ago, I don't even remember what the swan looks like anymore. Except there are some mornings when I wake up And I think that I will just run into the woods and pick wild strawberries, or I will go swimming in the lake, or I will dance until dawn, and then in a rage I remember I'm in this dragon. I'm like the princess in the crumbling tower, still waiting for her Prince Charming.
You should have written books.
Oh, I have written. What else was there for an old maiden lady to do? I was a crazy girl, with a head full of carnival spangles until I was 31 years old, and then the only man I ever really cared about got tired of waiting for me and married someone else. So I told myself I was being punished for being a foolish girl, and I began to travel. My luggage is snowed under a blizzard of travel stickers. I have been alone in Vienna. I have been alone in London. I have been alone in Paris. And all in all, it's pretty much like being alone in Greentown, Illinois. You are, in essence, alone. Oh, you have plenty of time to think and to work on your manners and sharpen your conversation. But I often think that I would trade the proper verb tense for a weekend guest staying over for 30 years. Oh, such a rush of self-pity. You tell me about yourself. You're 31 and you're not yet married.
Well, let me put it this way. Women who act and think and speak like you are rare.
Well, you shouldn't expect women your age to act and think and speak as I do. They're too young. Besides, the average man will run the moment he suspects that a woman has a brain underneath her hat.
I shall probably end up a meticulous old bachelor spilling ashes into my lap.
No, you mustn't do that. Please don't do that. It wouldn't be right. You shouldn't even be here this afternoon. This street ends in an Egyptian pyramid. Well, pyramids are very interesting, but mummies are hardly fit companions. Tell me, what would you really like to do? Where would you really like to go?
Istanbul, Port Said, Budapest. I'd like to write a book, smoke too many cigarettes, fall off a cliff, be caught in a tree halfway down, run through a Moroccan alley at midnight and get shot at. Love a beautiful woman.
Well, I can't give you all those things, but I have traveled to all those places, and I can tell you about them. And if you care to run across my lawn tonight about 11 p.m., if I'm still awake, I will shoot off my Civil War musket at you. Will that satisfy your masculine urge for adventure?
Yes, but only if your marksmanship is very poor.
Well, then tell me, where would you like to go? I can tell stories and weave a spell for you. Oh, put some of that nice tobacco in that pipe of yours and make some ashes. Where should we go? London? Cairo? Oh. Cairo turns your face on like a light.
He lights his pipe, leans back in his chair, and listens as she begins.
Cairo.
The hour passes in the jewels, in the alleys, and the sands of the Egyptian desert. The sun is golden and the Nile muddy where it laps upon the deltas. There is someone very young and very quick at the top of the pyramid, urging him to climb up the shadow side into the sun. Now he is climbing, She reaches down with her hand and helps him up the final step. And now they are both on the back of a camel, loping across the desert toward the distant image of the great stretched Sphinx. Helen finishes. William Forster opens his eyes. They are home again, very comfortable with each other on the best of terms. The tea cold in the silver pot, the biscuits dry in the late afternoon sun. He stretches and yawns and stretches again. This is the most comfortable I've been in all my life.
As I.
Oh my goodness, I've kept you late. I'm sorry, I should have
Don't
gone
be
hours ago.
ridiculous. You know that I loved every minute of it. And what you should see in a silly old woman. What are you doing?
You know, if you make adjustments, allowances, just,
What's wrong?
I saw it.
Saw what?
Well, the swan. I'm sorry. I'm terribly sorry. I shouldn't have said.
You should just go now. You just stop talking. Just please, please come back tomorrow. But you should go home now.
Bill Forster gets up and walks across the garden, leaving her sitting at the table. He does not look back. But he is invited. 4 days, 8 days, 12 days. They have tea and supper and lunch. They talk of politics and society and art and literature. They dine on squab and ice cream and drink fine wine.
People are saying things about me, aren't they? I knew it. A woman is never free from gossip, even when she is 95 years old. Where shall we go today? Paris?
Paris. Now she is sitting on a bridge over this river Seine, and he is next to her looking up at the great Eiffel Tower. She has in her talcum fingers an aperitif. He turns to her and takes his glass and touches hers. All the traveling that she has done alone, now they are traveling together. It's the middle of August, and late in the afternoon, they sit together after their travels, quietly, looking at one another.
William, do you remember when we first met in the drug shop that you said that you had a certain affection for me?
Well, that's embarrassing.
Spit it out.
I saw your picture once.
No, that's impossible. I never let my picture be taken.
It was one taken a long time ago when you were 20.
Oh, that. That's an old picture of me. Every time I attend a charity or attend a ball, the picture dusts it off and prints it. I have told them to do so.
In the newspaper?
Yes.
Well, that's cruel of the paper.
No. I told them, take the picture back from 1853. Let them remember the swan. And keep the lid closed in the funeral service for the good Lord's sake.
I'll tell you all about it. It was a simple, straightforward picture, a simple hairdo. I didn't know it was taken so long ago. I cut the picture out because the article spoke of a ball and that Miss Helen Lomas was going to marshal the town ball that night. The picture is very clear now in his mind. The face of spring and summer and warm clover breath, captured by a miracle of photographic chemistry so that no clock winds could blow upon it and change it for 1 year or 1 second. And then later in the day in the office, one of my colleagues saw me looking at the picture and he told me that the picture was taken many, many years ago and republished every year, and that I should not go to the ball carrying that picture and looking for you.
Do you remember that I spoke of a certain gentleman that attended upon me 70 years ago? Well, he's been dead for 50 years now. But when he was alive, he rode the fastest horse in town. He was handsome and sunburned, and his hands were always cut, and he fumed like a stovepipe as if he would always come apart. He couldn't keep a job, and the jobs that he had, he quit whenever he felt like it, and finally he just sort of rode away from me because I was wilder than he was and wouldn't settle down. And I thought that I would never see him again. But here you are. You are so much like him. You are clumsy and graceful combined, and you spill ashes in your lap just the same way that he used to. I know what you're going to say before you say it, and then after you say it, I feel surprised. William, reincarnation has always been a lot of milk mush to me, but the other day I wondered if you were crossing the street and I called out, "Robert, Robert," would you turn around?
I don't know.
That makes life very interesting, doesn't it?
The first cool winds of autumn moved through the town. One afternoon, William Forrester is walking through the garden and finds Miss Loomis sitting at a table, writing very carefully.
I am writing you a letter.
Well, me being here saves you the trouble.
No, it's a very special letter. You look at it.
She holds up a blue envelope, slips the letter into it, lays it down, seals it, and presses it flat.
I want you to remember what this looks like. When you receive this, you will know that I am dead.
Well, that's no way to talk.
No, William, just sit and listen. In a few days, I shall be dead. No, I'm not afraid. When you live to be as old as I am, you lose that too.
You can't predict your own death.
For 50 years, I have wound the grandfather clock in my hall, William, and I know to the exact hour when it will stop. Old people are like that too. We can feel the weights shift and the machinery slow. It's just we shan't be seeing each other.
She turns the
No, don't
envelope
look like
in her
that. Please. We've had a nice time here, haven't we? These afternoons. I have always known that the quality of love was the mind. And there has been your mind here and my mind here in these afternoons like none that I can remember. And there's still so much to talk about. So we'll just have to save it for another time.
Well, we don't seem to have much time.
Well, time is strange, and life twice as strange. The wheels turn and the cogs miss, and lives interlace too early or too late. You were either born too early or I have lived on too long, that much is sure. Either way, it has been a bad bit of timing. I'm probably being punished for being such a silly girl, but all the same, next time, the wheels might turn right. But in the meantime, you must get married to a very nice girl, but promise me one thing.
Anything.
Promise me that you will not live to be too long. If you can arrange it, you should die by the time you're 50. Well, because I don't know exactly how long they let you linger on the other side. And it would be terrible, wouldn't it, if you lived on to be an old, old man and you met me 21 years old and the whole thing out of balance all over again? Well, I don't think I could bear. These afternoons have been wonderful, but 1,000 pounds of tea and 500 biscuits is enough for one friendship, don't you think? So you must arrange to have an attack of pneumonia in about 20 years. And I shall do my best, William. Really, I shall. And if the wheels turn right, next time, we might get it right. And do you know what could happen?
You tell me.
One day, about 1999, a young man named John Green will be walking down the street, and he will stop at the drug shop and he will order an unusual flavor of ice cream, and there will be a girl sitting there at the table the exact same age. When she hears that flavor of ice cream, she won't understand why. Assuredly, neither of them will understand why. He will simply sit and they will talk. And when they know each other's first names, then they will walk out from that drug shop together. Now, you must forgive an old woman for tying things up into neat packages. It's all a silly little trifle to leave you with. So let's talk about something else now. Tell me, where haven't we gone? Stockholm.
Yes, a very fine city.
Glasgow. Where haven't we been?
How about here? Greentown. Right here, we haven't traveled together in Greentown.
Yes. Yes, I will tell you what it was like to be 19, so very young, here so long ago.
It is a night in October, and she is running on the moss along the river. It is a night in winter, and she is skating lightly across a pond of moon ice. It is a night in summer, the 4th of July, skyrockets slamming the sky, and on every front porch, first red fire, then blue fire, then white fire faces, hers dazzling among the rest as the last rocket dies.
Can you see me, William Forrest? Can you see me doing and being with all these things?
Yes, Helen Loomis, I see you. Bill Forrester is at his desk when the blue envelope arrives. He does not open it. He merely puts it in his shirt pocket and heads into town. He turns in at the drugstore and sits at the marble counter. He takes the envelope out of his pocket and lays it in front of him. He does not open it. He looks out the window at the yellow sun on the concrete and the green awnings over the windows. He looks at his watch and hears his heart beating slowly, the second hand of the watch moving hardly at all. He looks up at the calendar on the wall, September 7th, 1928. The day seems frozen there. The sun nailed to the sky with no movement toward sunset whatsoever. The warm air spreads under the sighing fans over his head. Finally, he opens the envelope, and he practices the words silently, forming them on his tongue. And then finally he speaks aloud. A dish of old-fashioned lime vanilla ice, he says. A dish of old-fashioned lime vanilla ice.